Good morning. Welcome to Unity Orlando. Our opening statement this morning is here we go. It is not I, but the Spirit within that does the work through me. Let's all affirm that together. It is not I, but the Spirit within that does the work through me. Let's all close our eyes and take a nice deep breath in. Let's affirm that together in the silence. And so it is. Now, if you'd like to stand and help us sing our joy song this morning, it is a chant. I wrote it when I was in need of some spirit protection. It's called Spirit Invitation. Spirit, see through me now, hear through me now, and speak through me. Spirit, be with me now, be right here now, and comfort me. Spirit, space and comfort me. Spirit, live through me now. I feel you now. We are one. Spirit, see through me now. Hear through me now. Space and comfort me. Spirit, feel through me now. I feel you now. We are one. Be right here now and comfort me. Be right here now. We are one. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Paul Kenny. I'm your platform person today. Susan Francis flew the coop. But she did tell me to tell a story, so we'll do that in a minute. Any visitors? I know everybody that I see. Okay. Welcome, everyone here. Welcome, everyone online. Our chaplains pray every evening at 8 p.m. and invite you to join them from wherever you are. And Bob's here today, so we do have a chaplain here to help pray with you if you'd like prayer after service. Both the men's and women's group meet Sunday following the 11 o'clock service, next Sunday. Reverend Bob's lesson this morning is protection. So on to the story. I think I gave a talk last year and I told a story about our flight surgeon who was attached to our squadron on the aircraft carrier, and he usually flew with me whenever. A flight surgeon's a doctor, but they're not a pilot, so. So Doc and I went flying one afternoon, and one of the things that he always taught us out of the book of his teachings was you never fly with a cold. You never take any kind of medication, no decongestants, none. You don't do any of that when you're flying an airplane. And, you know, it was kind of drummed into us over and over again. But those of us who'd been around for a while know that a sinus block can come up and grab you at any time. You can have a little bit of an allergy, or just be a tad bit stuffy, and it's really painful. It happens when you're coming down, and it feels like somebody's got a knife going right in there. If your sinus ruptures, it takes about 6 weeks to heal. So those of us with some experience would always take a bottle of nasal spray. We usually picked Afrin because it was so strong, and we put it right in our flight suit pocket, right over here. But we never told the flight surgeon. So Doc and I are up, we're up at high holding, we're coming down, and all of a sudden, I can tell he's very uncomfortable to the right of me. He's moving around. I'm pretty sure I heard him yell into his oxygen mask in pain. And so I keyed my intercom and said, sinus block, and his head's bobbing up and down. So I added power, and we just start climbing. The only way to get the pain to stop is to go back up. So I said, Doc, tell me when the pain stops. So we climbed pretty much back to where we were. And he said, okay, it stopped. And I said, Doc, you want some Afrin? And his head snapped, and he looked at me, and he said, you got some? And so I said, yep, and I handed it to him, and he shot that stuff up his nose, let it sit for a little bit, came down, no problem. So the next time he gave us the lecture, never fly with a cold, never medicate, don't take anything, but always, always, he said, carry a bottle of Afrin in your flight suit pocket in case you get a sinus block. So that's the doc story. Over to you, Brian.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I was talking to another pilot, and he would wear his flight suit every once in a while, and he never gave up what was in any of his pockets. But now I know what was in one of them. A couple weeks ago, I did a song called Love Begins, and I wrote it in the eye of a hurricane. And at that time, I was writing 2 songs at a time. I'd always write, and they sounded completely different. And this is the other one to that song that I wrote in the eye of Hurricane Charlie. It's called Reflections. Put yourself in the middle of a circle full of love. See yourself in a mirror and reflect upon who you find. The sigh of reflections in this ordinary world. Rain falls from the clouds in the memories of life, then clears up and dries by the afternoon twilight. The sigh of reflections in this extraordinary world. What lives, what gives in the mirrors of your mind? Seasons, reflections that you find. The sigh of reflections in this extraordinary world. What could be the final answer? Is it lost within the mirrors of time? Where can we start the searching? Should it be within our own mind? Put your love in a mirror to reflect upon a new mankind. What lives, what gives in the mirrors of your mind? Seasons, reflections that you find. The sigh of reflections in this extraordinary world. what lives, what gives in the mirrors of your mind. Believe in the seasons, reflections that you find. The sigh of reflections in this extraordinary world. Put your love in reflections in this parallel of worlds.
Ah, that was beautiful. Wonderful way to get this service going. Thank you all for making the music sound so wonderful. Thank you all for being with us, all of you at home and all of you who are here. Welcome to August. Is it hot enough for you? We had our neighbor, his mother bought the house across the street from us, and she's arrived in July. And, she's walking around, I said, "How are you adjusting?" She says, "It's hot." I said, "Well, it's got to be hard if you come down here to Florida in July and start with us right in the middle of July." I said, "Please don't judge us by the weather that's going on right now. It's always hot in July and August." Yeah, this year seems to be hotter. But I said, "You get snow up there, we have July and August down here." But we're protected even through the heat. I've been out, I would work outside some this week, and Patty would come home and say, "Are you okay? You shouldn't be out there in that heat." And I'm thinking, I'm going to do what I want to do. Yeah, somehow I'm protected. Protection, that's the topic today. Do you know that you're protected? This consciousness of protection, it's something you kind of build over time. You have to have enough times of realizing that you were right on the edge and you didn't go over. I definitely feel I'm protected. I could have died so many times it's ridiculous because I love to do stupid things. Yeah. And somehow, I've always slipped through. That's why I will often say, God wants to make sure that I live every day of my sentence. I won't be leaving early. You build that over time. Enough times you say, "Oh, good, if you enter into this consciousness of protection, nothing bad will ever happen to me." And that isn't even close to true. But you will get through it if you know you're protected. You will get through it. I want to start with the prayer of protection because that truly embodies this consciousness. So just listen to it and let it settle in. The light of God surrounds me. You want to go with it. Each statement, feel it. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. And the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. And all is well. We say that at the end of every service. And if you're like me, you say it all the time. This prayer was written by James Dillard Freeman, Unity's poet laureate during World War II. Someone came to him and said, we need a prayer to be given to the guys over wherever they are, Europe or the Pacific, to all our guys who are fighting in World War II. They need to know God is with them. And they're going through really rough stuff right now. So will you write us something? And he wrote this: the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is, and thus all is well. Actually, there were a whole bunch of other lines he wrote too, so it was quite a long prayer to start with. But it was too long, so it got shortened to something that people could say in the clinch. And so that's how we use it. I don't know how you use it, but that's how I use it. I've used it on the road. I've used it when things seem to be going down the tubes. I've used it when emotionally distraught. And I've used it in situations where I actually felt fear. Whenever I feel fear, I go to it, the prayer of protection. Because that's what you need to feel. God is there with you at that time. Almost 50 years ago now, when my dad was building that pyramid house that my sister and I just sold, when he was building that in that Colorado Mountain Valley, I went to visit him. I was probably in the first year or two of my ministry. I was in Miami, I assume, which is where I started out. Went to visit him, and it was unfinished. So here we are, we're in the pyramid, and he's showing me what it's like inside, but there are no floors yet. There are no floors. A couple of beams across, but no floors. And so here we are, and I look up there at this 40-foot high to the pinnacle of the pyramid, because there are no floors. So it's 40 foot high. And up there, he has these beams going from side to side, cutting the corners so that he can stand up there and work. And I'm going, oh my God. And then my eyes fall upon the ladder. He's got a 40-foot ladder, or at least a 36 or something, because these are just short, and these are down 6 foot down from the peak. You know. And so he says, well, you want to go up and see what it's like up there? Well, being stupid, I said, okay. And he goes up, and he sits on, and gets off the ladder and sits, okay, your turn. And I start up this ladder. This thing is like 36 foot tall, this ladder. And it's leaning against a beam up there. And to reach that beam, it has to be almost vertical. It's not slanting hard. It's got this little tiny bit of slant. So as I climb up there, I realize if I let my body weight go out this far, the whole thing goes over. Okay? So I'm going up. I said, well, Dad did it. Surely I can do it too. And I'm climbing, hugging that ladder the whole way up. And as I come across the top, I'm going, the light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. And he says, oh, that's a hoot. I says, I am not kidding. Sometimes you just have to repeat something that reminds you are protected. You're gonna get through this. It's not going to keep you from climbing 40 foot up and sitting on this stupid, flimsy little beam. But you're going to get through this because God is with you. References to God as the Spirit of protection are scattered throughout the Bible, or all the way through. Of course, the big one that everybody knows from the Old Testament is Daniel in the lion's den, right? Here is Daniel. He's like really good friends with the king. They are big buddies. But some of the king's court managed to get him to pass a law that says, you can't pray to any god except his God, the king's God. Maybe it's the king himself, I'm not sure. But in any case, the bottom line is, and so then they catch Daniel, who prays every day. He's Jewish, and he prays every day. And they say, okay, he broke the law. You got to throw him in the lion's den. Now, the king is not happy over this at all. He says, I'm going to have to do this, and it's killing me. And Daniel says, don't worry. God is with me. I will be okay. And his last things are, may your God protect you as you go in there, because the king is really unhappy to see his good friend go into this. And the next morning, he calls Daniel, are you alive? And Daniel comes walking out and said, my God closed the lion's mouth. I'm fine. They left me alone. And the king says, good. Now let's see how the guys who accused you do as well. And he throws them in, and of course they get eaten. After all, they're quite hungry after they couldn't eat Daniel all night. Daniel said, my God is with me. The greatest enemy of protection is fear. And if you can get rid of your fear, without fear, you can go through anything. So that first step to achieving any consciousness of protection is to abandon fear, to leave it behind. And how do you abandon fear? Well, Daniel demonstrated it beautifully. God is here with me, and all is well. That's your big step. If you know God is with you, you can turn away from fear. So in any difficult situation, the very first thing you want to do is declare, God is here right now with me, and all is well. And your mind will say, it doesn't look so well. And maybe it doesn't. But if you know God is with you, all is well. I am protected. Once you say God is here and all is well, the next thing you do is you put it in God's hands and you trust. Okay, God, it's yours. And you trust. When I was in ministerial school, we went to Chicago to visit one of the most successful ministers in the Unity movement at that time. Her name was Johnnie Colemon. She was in Chicago, Reverend Johnnie Colemon. And Reverend Johnnie Colemon lived in and started a church in one of the more dangerous sections of Chicago. And every day she left her apartment, and part of her demonstration of her belief in prosperity was she dressed really nicely and dressed to the nines, and she would walk the 8, 9, 10 blocks it was down to where the storefront was, where she was opening her church. Well, this grew much bigger and became a much bigger thing. But one day she is making this trip, and here she is, dressed to the nines, and this really rough-looking guy runs up and grabs her purse. He's taken one look at her. She's dressed nice in this section of town. She must have some money in that purse. So he grabs that purse and yanks, but Johnny's a big lady. She's over 6 foot, and she wasn't going to give up. She's hanging on to half the purse, and he's got the other half. And there's a tug of war going on. And Johnny wants to call on God for help at that point, and she knows there is this psalm that she uses all of the time. You know, Psalm 91:4, the Lord is my refuge and my fortress. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall trust. You shall not be afraid. But she's a little stressed, and she can't remember how it goes in the emergency of the moment. So she looks this guy on the other half of her purse in the eyes and goes, I am covered with feathers. And his eyes went wide, and he screamed, and he threw the purse at her and ran the other way. You know, sometimes the words don't matter as long as you know what they mean. And who knows what went on in that guy's mind. But she called on God, and the guy screamed. I've always loved that story. I want to talk about 5 doorways into the consciousness of protection that are presented by 5 scriptures. Okay. 5 scriptures I've pulled out that each represents a little different approach for entering into that consciousness of protection. And the first doorway is to declare, God is with me right now, and thus all is well. This is what we just said, right? And probably what supports this most, what embodies it totally, is the 23rd Psalm, right? God is with me right now. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to rest in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Whatever I need will be provided. I need not fear. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I'm going to go through good things in this life if I follow the leading, because the Lord is leading me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now that's protection. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Right in the midst of things going wrong, some good is being prepared to come out of this. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely thy goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I will always know I am in the presence of God, that the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, and the presence of God watches over me. That wherever I am, God is. I can't go beyond him. And thus, in spite of all appearances, all is well, for God is with me. That's a consciousness of protection. The second doorway in is to know that God is in charge of my life, not the world. We tend to think the world is just kicking us around, and we need to know God is in charge. My life is not between me and everybody else around me. My life is between me and God, okay? God and I are building this life. And if things aren't going the way I want it, it's not their fault. It's between God and I. We need to know that. Luke 22:42, Jesus prayed, this is just prior to the arrest, Father, if thou wilt, let this cup pass from me. But not as I will, but thy will be done. God's in charge. We got some input. And sometimes we get what we want. And sometimes we don't. But whether we get what we want or don't get what we want, God's still in charge. And so all is well, even when it doesn't look that way. God's still in charge. The third doorway I'm going to point out is I am a spiritual being, a child of God. I am so much more than this physical self. You got to keep reminding yourself who you are. The world will tell you you're a feeble human being at the mercy of everyone and everything around you. But inside, you must realize, no, that's not who I really am. That's just what I'm wearing at the moment. I am a spiritual being. I'm a child of God. And I am so much more than this physical self and this physical world and all this physical experience that I have to go through. I am so much more than that. And the scripture, 1 John 4:4, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. That which is in you is greater than that which is in the world. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way. And in the clinch, you're going to have to remind yourself that that is true. And the fifth one I'm going to point out is to know I can call on the invisible, no, this is the fourth, I'm sorry. I can call on the invisible spiritual forces of the universe to help me. Okay. Said sometimes you get what you want, and sometimes you don't. But you know you're allowed to ask. You're allowed to ask for God's help. And there'll always be some sort of response. Sometimes it's just a feeling or a knowing, and sometimes it's something really dramatic, like it was for Paul and Silas in Acts 16, 23, 25, 26. When they had flogged Paul and Silas severely, they cast them into prison. Now at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened and the bands were loosed. That's a pretty specific earthquake. That's a miracle, right? A miracle of protection. Now, in the end, Paul and Silas chose to stay because they knew that if the prisoner escapes, they killed the jailer. But the next morning, the council that had put him in jail were very happy to free them and get them out of town as quickly as possible. After all, this weird miracle had happened. These were powerful beings. No. As it says in Star Wars, for I am powerful for the ally of the Force is my ally. Do you know that God is your ally in this life? That the very spiritual forces of the universe can respond. They will respond as God directs. You don't have a lot of control over it, but you are allowed to ask. And when you ask, amazing things often happen. And the last door I want to talk about is know as a spiritual being, I live in the light of God. And that is my protection. The light of God surrounds me. That's how it starts, right? A prayer of protection. I live in the light. And that light of God is my protection. In Romans 13:12, Paul writes, let us cast off the works of darkness. Let us put on the armor of light. And that's something we should be doing every day. Before we go out and meet that day, knowing I am a spiritual being, become aware of that light of God shining through us. And now go out to meet the world. Because it's that shining light moving through you that is your greatest protection in life. In fact, one of our best tools is to surround ourselves, or something else if that's what we're worried about, in the light of protection. Surrounded in light. When you see light around something, the light of God surrounds us. You're seeing God. You're saying God is right there. God is shining through this situation. And thus all must be well. When you surround yourself with light, we should be doing it each day. You create this bubble of protection. You walk out into the world in your bubble. I am in a bubble of light, a bubble of protection. For me, it was when I sat on the beach in that storm and started meditating and trying to be in God's presence. Covered up with everything because the raindrops were coming in horizontal instead of vertical, and they were stinging. So I pulled my hoodie up close and had my hands underneath and did my best to meditate, and evidently I succeeded. You've all heard this story before if you've been around. Because I decided that the storm had stopped, and I opened my eyes, and I realized the storm had not stopped in any way, shape, or form. But all the water was blowing and going around me. Nothing was hitting me anymore. I was in this place of stillness while the winds were still raging at the beach. That's what being in a bubble of protection is all about. That's why we say, the light of God surrounds me. We want to be in that bubble of stillness, of peace, of knowing that all is well. So, surround yourself with light every day. Surround whatever you worry about with light. If I'm worried about something, take a moment to see it surrounded in light. That draws you into that consciousness of protection. If you've got an upcoming event that concerns you, you're going to have to go through, surrounded in light before you get there. Your image of that event, of that encounter. Or you can get as practical and physical, you might say, as I got when I decided I had to protect my cat, Pippin. I'm going back well over 40 years now. But I had my family at that time. We had moved into this little tiny house. Before tiny houses were a thing, this was not much bigger than a tiny house, and we moved in with 3 kids. But in any case, here we were, but really we moved in to be on the 5 acres that had been an organic farm, and there were every fruit tree imaginable. There was everything on this property. We adored it. It was down in South Dade, south of Miami. Problem is, it really was country, and every night the farm cats, the local wild cats, would attack our cat Pippin, and the dog Sunshine and I would run out to save its life. We'd run out in the middle of the night, and the cats would go away. I don't know how many times Pippin had to lay up for several weeks just to recover. And one day, we realized it's time to go on vacation. We were going to be gone for something like 3 weeks. And the cat had to stay, and the dog was going with us. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to come back to a dead cat. And then I realized, you know, you are a Unity minister. Maybe you should do something spiritual. Really? So I said, okay. You can do it with a thought. But for me, I wanted to make a big deal out of it. I thought the more I made a big deal out of it, the more my being would accept that this was what was going on. So I decided to put a wall of light all the way around the property. And I went around and walked the entire circumference of the property while radiating this wall of light. Then I came back, and Pippin's laying on the chair on the front porch, and I ceremoniously surround Pippin with light. And then you just have to turn it over to God and leave, because we went on vacation. And when we came back, Pippin was fine. No problem whatsoever. The neighbors said, I didn't hear any cat fights at all the whole time you were gone. I went, oh, it worked. It's a bunch of those little things that happen that begin to awaken your faith in protection. So let's talk about some tools for entering into the consciousness of God's protection when life threatens. When life threatens, what are you going to do? Well, if you're Johnny Coleman, you're going to say, I'm covered in feathers. And it works. Amazing. Okay, very first suggestion. Declare the prayer of protection. This is my standby. Whenever things get rough, I immediately start with the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, and the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is, and all is well. And you put your will into that. You put your force into that, because you're not willing God, you're willing yourself away from your fear. The second tool is to, maybe you would prefer to use a couple of lines from the 23rd Psalm. If you're really good, maybe you can repeat the whole 23rd Psalm, but that's a lot. And I'm guessing that a shorter version is going to stick with you if you use it over and over and over. It might simply be, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Say it over and over and over until that can come up in the emergency. The third tool is simply to cut to the chase and affirm over and over and over, God is with me and all is well. God is with me and all is well. That's like taking that 91st Psalm and condensing it down to I am covered with feathers, okay? God is with me and all is well. You can always remember that. God is with me. God is with me and all is well. The fourth tool is to surround whatever you are worried about in light and put God in charge. Surround Pippin in light and find he's still alive when you get home. That there hasn't even been any cat fight heard. Surround your car in light. All heard the story of my friend from Miami who had surrounded her car with 6 inches of light, and every morning she did that. And when she went down US 1, she ended up in the middle of this huge 30-car pileup. And she said at least 3 or 4 times during those half a second when everything went crazy, a car came 6 inches away from her car, but when it was all over, her car had not been touched. And you all know her final conclusion. She moved it out to 3 foot. 6 inches was just a little close. Well, surrounded in light, whatever you're going to do, whatever causes you concern, immediately surrounded in light. When someone is driving home and you have this image of twisted metal, oh my God, please be careful, then amend that and immediately surround them in light. That nullifies all that negativity you just imaged. Surround them in light. When you're concerned about someone, surround them in light. When you're concerned about yourself, surround yourself in light. And that is number 5, put on the armor of light. Image yourself every morning, glowing in light, and see yourself in a bubble of protection. This is something that needs to be part of our daily routine. This is who I am. Number 6 is affirm, I'm a child of God and I am protected. God will take care of me. I'm a child of God and I am protected. Do you know you're protected? You need to affirm it until you have a sense that I am protected. And what you're going to do is you're going to look for those times that it happens. You're going to add them all up. That should have been worse. That could have been worse. I was protected. Protected doesn't mean you never face anything difficult. You wouldn't even come here if you had never had to face anything difficult. This is about learning and growing. You're going to face difficulty. But you're also going to get through it. I'm a child of God. I'm protected. There'll always be a path forward. And number 7, remind yourself you're a soul and nothing in this world can truly harm you. This is a hard one because we tend to think of ourselves as physical beings. Well, once in a while, when the physical is not cooperating, you have to remember that's not who I am. I'm a soul. And when you remember that, you will know that which is in me. Then you declare, that which is in me is greater than that which is in the world. Declare it over and over. That which is in me is greater than that which is in the world. That which is in me is greater than the part of me that's in the world or anything in the world that threatens. Which leads us to simply live your life knowing you are protected. Jesus said, be it done to you according to your faith. If you believe that everything that can go wrong will go wrong, it will. Be it done to you according to your faith. Do you know that even when things go wrong, the Spirit of God is with me, protecting me and carrying me through and on to greater things? So, if we wrap it up, we'll say, when facing anything in this world that causes you fear, simply know God is with me right now. And thus I am protected. Then realize God's in charge and you can trust God. So say, God, thy will be done. And trust that that which is for the highest good will be done. Maybe it's not what I want, maybe it is. But that which is for the highest good will be done. And through it all, remember, in spite of appearances, God is with me right now. And in spite of these appearances, because God is with me, all is well. One of the keys to living a good life is to live your life knowing you are protected. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. And the presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is. And thus, wherever you are, all is well. So let's close our eyes. Take a deep breath, sigh it out. And hear that call from deep within your soul. Be still and know I am God. Be still and know that I am God. I am that presence within you. So as we move into our heart holy, we can feel the presence of the divine light there with us. Surrounding us in light, loving us. The very power of God is now moving through us. And that everywhere present Spirit is watching over us, sheltering us. Right now, here within my heart, I know God is with me, and all is well. No matter the appearances of my life, right here inside of me, God is with me, and all is well. So remembering you are so much more than that physical being, become aware of that armor of light, that light that radiates out from the center of your being. Light fills my body. Light radiates beyond it until I am this wonderful ball or egg of light. That light is my bubble of protection. Only goodness can make it through the light. So think of someone in your life that needs protection and surround them in light. Know that all is well. Think of your house or your car. Surround them with light. Think of upcoming issues in your life. With each one, surround them in light. And realize I'm a child of God. I am loved, and I am protected by the Spirit of light pervading all being. For the light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. And the presence of God watches over me. Feel God's protecting power moving through you. And realize, wherever I am, God is. And all is well. Thank you, God. Amen. And if our usher will come forward, we'll prepare for our offering. For you at home, if you're new, you need to understand how to give your offering, and this is how it works. You go to the home page at the end of service, and you can hit the Donate Now button. That'll take you to where you can use a credit card or PayPal. You can pull the address off and write us a check and send it to us through the mail, or you can call the office and arrange for regular offerings to be taken out. Now, those of you at home, you hold the thought of what you're going to give, and those of us who are here, we're going to hold it in our hands right now. Let's affirm together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. Thank you, God. Amen.
I speak your word and it comforts my soul. When stillness turns to silence, when the whole world is quiet, I feel a loving light come shining through my life. And I feel grateful you're lighting up my life. My love divine light shine. Sometimes my heart may stumble in a world that's full of rubble. Sometimes my humanness will cause us to fall. Open up to spirit guidance, illuminating omnipresence, listening in the silence for spirit to come. And I feel grateful you're lighting up my life. My love divine light shine.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're real close to on time. That's called a miracle. First, whether you're at home or whether you're sitting right here, thank you for being Unity Orlando and my spiritual family. Next Sunday, I'll be speaking on a good life. And this is kind of leading up to the following week when we're going to do, 2 weeks from today, we're going to be doing the White Stone Ceremony. So that's the time when we reevaluate our spiritual goals for the year and so forth. So next week, a good life. Let's all rise and let's radiate into the world something you might have heard a little bit about today, our prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. God bless you.